The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And on behalf of my constituents in the Bronx and Queens, New York's 14th congressional district, the most impacted district in America, calling people losing their families every day. It is a joke when Republicans say that they have urgency around this bill. The only folks that they have urgency around are folks like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and Shake Shack. Those are the people getting assistance in this bill. You are not trying to fix this bill for mom and pops. And we have to fight to fund hospitals, fighting to fund testing. That is what we're fighting for in this bill. It is unconscionable. If you had urgency, you would legislate like rent was due on May 1st and make sure that we include rent and mortgage relief for our constituents. Thank you very much.
And that is how you make the most out of 30 seconds on the floor of Congress. This is AOC railing against the bill to provide another $321 billion to the Paycheck Protection Program after it turned out that the businesses benefiting from the first round of funding were a number of massive companies, including Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and Shake Shack, as well as other chain restaurants, hoteliers, and publicly traded corporations. Because who else would the Trump administration's Small Business Association prioritize than Ruth's Chris? Now, the bill did include some concessions that Democrats fought for, including $75 billion for hospitals and $25 billion for disease testing. But A, for a country contending with a nationwide pandemic, to say that those amounts are not enough would be an understatement to say the least. And B, what's more telling is what the bill was missing. There was no vote by mail or USPS funding, no hazard pay for essential workers, no oversight on bailout funds, no limits on funding for fossil fuel companies, no stimulus checks, no city or state funding so that they can pay frontline workers. I mean, call me a radical socialist, but if we're going to be doling out $500 billion in taxpayer dollars, because lest you forget, those are our tax dollars, one might think that at least some portion should go to the priorities of regular people. But instead, we're stuck on this constant loop of bailing out big business while you and me and our friends and family get nothing. Now, the reason that Democrats came on board with this was predicated on the notion that this bill was solely for the Paycheck Protection Program, and that there would be a larger bill later that would address the issues that Democrats are focused on. But staking our hopes on a later bill suggests that Mitch McConnell is telling the truth. And call me a cynic, but nothing that he nor Republicans have done suggests that they will act in good faith. And look, that's not to say that he won't, but the question here is whether it's wise to hope that Mitch McConnell will do the right thing, and rarely has that worked out in our favor. Keep in mind, too, that McConnell has referred to any additional aid for the states as a, quote, blue state bailout, which is noteworthy for two reasons. One, blue states are donor states and always have been. 13 of the top 15 states most dependent on the federal government voted for Trump in the 2016 election, while 10 of the 15 least dependent states in the nation voted for Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton. And in fact, McConnell's own state is the state that receives the most money from the federal government for every dollar it puts in, receiving $2.41 back for every dollar it pays. Kind of like a red state bailout, only every single day. And two, the money that, quote, blue states are seeking is money for states to continue paying frontline workers. So I'm not sure how much of a recovery we're going to have if we can't pay state public health workers and police officers and firefighters and paramedics and teachers. Honestly, try letting funding lapse in those states and see what kind of a recovery happens in McConnell's own state of Kentucky, because something tells me that suddenly it won't seem like just a blue state issue anymore. And then, lo and behold, the very next bit of news to emerge was that McConnell was chilly to the idea of passing any more legislation until Congress comes back, and also suggested that any more stimulus packages might be detrimental to the national debt. Because of course he's worried about the debt after dumping billions upon billions into big business, after shepherding Trump's $2 trillion tax cut for billionaires and corporations through Congress that exploded our deficit. Because when his buddies want billions, he's all in. But as soon as regular Americans need a few crumbs, well, look, we need to be fiscally responsible here. McConnell even said that he's willing to let the states go bankrupt, a remark that drew sharp bipartisan criticism, most notably from Andrew Cuomo.
It's one of the dumb statements of all time. Mitch McConnell, they're talking about bringing back the economy, and then he says states should declare bankruptcy. How does that help the national economy? States should declare bankruptcy. He then says this is a bailout to the blue states, which was a really offensive statement. What he's saying is the blue states are the states that have the coronavirus problem. Why? Because the coronavirus problem is basically a function of density, and urban areas have more density. And those are cities, and cities are blue. They are Democrats. So why should he bail out the blue areas? I mean, it really is offensive. You talk about one issue where you think you can get past partisanship and pettiness, and now you talk about helping communities where people are dying, and you say they are blue states? No, the coronavirus attacks Republicans and it attacks Democrats. It doesn't ask someone, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? And normally in emergencies, Chris, it's the one time where you saw the federal government put the politics aside. A state had a hurricane, a state had a flood, they got federal funding because you didn't play politics with that. McConnell is the exact opposite. And that's why I said all along, they should have insisted that the state funding be in this bill. And when they signed this bill, they passed this bill, which did small business, they took care of airlines, they took care of all these industries, which is fine. You don't do state governments. And if you don't do state and local governments, by the way, that's police, that's fire, that's teachers, that's schools. You're not going to fund those areas. And you're not going to fund the states, which are the governors who are doing all the reopening. I mean, it's so politically repugnant.
Because apparently now that McConnell was able to get his fingerprints all over a corporate bailout with as little oversight as possible, when it comes time to actually help Americans, like hospitals and first responders and police officers, he suddenly becomes a fiscal conservative again. Funny how that always kicks in for people when those who aren't benefiting from a corporate bonus structure need some help. So while we can hope that another round of stimulus aid will pass that will actually help the American people, will help frontline workers, will fund the post office and ensure nationwide vote by mail, nothing that Mitch McConnell has done thus far would indicate that he's acting in good faith. So it has to be Democrats who will fight for it.